We should be good. Not so bad after all. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for attending this first press conference of the European Union Election Observation Mission. We will have first a statement by our Deputy Chief Observer, Beata Rozumilowicz, and after that we open the floor for questions and answers. After the press conference, there is a press release at the exit, and I pass the floor to our Deputy Chief Observer.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to this press conference of the European Union Election Observation Mission. I'm sure that you expected to see the EU EOM Chief Observer Massimo Castaldo on this stage. But unfortunately, due to 2 delayed flights and some subsequent misconnections, he's not been able to arrive in Harare on time. But I wanted to transmit a message on behalf of him and to say that Mr. Castaldo is very excited to lead this mission. He apologizes for his absence, but he asked me to extend his best regards and to deliver his remarks on his behalf. So as you may know, the EU Election Observation Mission was formally invited by the government of Zimbabwe. Our mandate is set out in the administrative arrangement, which was signed between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade and the European Union. It's a public document which you can find on our website and Facebook page. But it states our mandate, and especially that we are here to deliver an independent and impartial assessment of the entire electoral process. And I just wanted to stress that the EU Election Observation Mission is here to observe, not to interfere in any way with these upcoming elections, and that these are the elections of the Zimbabwean people. Since our arrival early in July, we have met with many of the key participants in these elections in all 10 provinces to learn firsthand how the elections are proceeding. We've met with government, we're meeting with political parties from all sides, from candidates of all color, with members of civil society, but as well with the media, to see and better understand how this ongoing process is developing. We base our findings, according to our election observation methodology, on direct observations only, and we do not use any hearsay or rumors in our assessments. We also do not correct any possible shortcomings while the process is ongoing, nor do we endorse the results or make any other statements about the quality of the elections until the respective stages are all completed. But the mandate of the Election Observation Mission is to assess all aspects of the electoral process before, during, and after Election Day, and to analyze the extent to which these elections are in line with international and regional standards for elections, as well as Zimbabwean law. These international principles, international standards, have been signed by Zimbabwe as part of its commitment to democratic processes, and so it is against these kinds of international standards and principles that we evaluate these 2023 elections. In line with our long-term observation methodology, we observe all aspects of the process, including the legal framework and its implementation. We, of course, look closely at the work of the election administration at all levels. We follow the campaign activities, and we look at questions of political and campaign finance issues. We look at the role of state institutions, but also the role that civil society plays in the process. We also have a robust assessment of the conduct of the media in elections, including a qualitative and quantitative media monitoring process. And we're also in these elections looking at the social media sphere, including a monitoring process of that aspect. On election day, we'll be looking at the voting, the counting, the tabulation of results, but we'll also be looking at the environment in which the election is being conducted. We'll also follow the complaints and the appeals process, should there be any, after the elections proceed. And we look especially at the role of marginalized groups. We look at the role of the participation of women and other groups in this category. In line with our methodology, it's also important to note that we don't just observe in urban areas, not just in cities or in towns, but we will also be present throughout the country in all 10 provinces of Zimbabwe. We'll be looking at rural areas, we'll be looking at remote areas, and so really getting a very balanced and composite picture of how the elections will be proceeding. We're entirely independent in our work. We're independent from other EU institutions, from the EU delegation, which is here in Zimbabwe, or from any other entity, institutional or political. I wanted to also transmit from the Chief Observer, Castaldo, that he sees the deployment of this mission as a spirit of partnership between the EU and the Zimbabwean people and authorities in achieving common democratic goals. The EU Election Observation Mission is committed to accompanying the Zimbabwean people throughout this process. Following the deployment of our core team on the 8th of July, we've also deployed 46 long-term observers earlier this week. And Mr. Castaldo will come as soon as possible to learn himself firsthand about the ongoing process when he is able to return to the country. For election day, our mission will be joined by 44 short-term observers. There will also be a delegation from the European Parliament, as well as diplomats accredited to the Republic of Zimbabwe will join our short-term election observation efforts. So overall, the EU Election Observation Mission expects to comprise more than 150 observers from all 27 of its EU member states, as well as Canada, Norway, and Switzerland. Chief Observer Castaldo will present the EU Election Observation Mission's preliminary statement to the Zimbabwean authorities and to the people of Zimbabwe some 2 days after the elections. EU observers will also remain in the country after election day to observe any ongoing aspects of the electoral process and the post-election environment. And finally, a final report with recommendations will be delivered approximately 2 months after the elections. I thank you very much for your attention. I thank you for your interest in election observation and for the interest in the European Union, and I look forward to any questions that you may have.
So, if there are any questions, please state your name and the media outlet you work for. Do we have any takers? Any questions at all? I don't see any questions. Well, actually, here is one.
My name is Yvonne Chaka with the Zimbabwe Daily. So you are, thank you. So as the EOM is in Zimbabwe, you are simply looking at what is happening and will get your observations afterward. What happens in a situation where the parties are complaining about the electoral playing field? What is your role there?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the election process is a very long-term process, and we look at it not just at election day, but I would say that we don't seek to replicate the institutions of this country. We don't seek to replicate the organizations of this country, and there are many efforts underway to give added transparency and added accountability to the process. And so our role is really to look at all aspects of that process, to accurately reflect it and show it almost as a mirror to the people of Zimbabwe after the elections, so that it appropriately and honestly reflects those elements that they themselves see of concern. And we also seek to give that voice in the outside world so that others around the globe will also understand better how this election has taken place.
Any other questions? I don't see any other questions, then I close this press conference. Thank you very much for attending. Did I miss somebody?
One question there.
Okay, no, sorry, I didn't see you. You were hidden behind.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Beata. I'm a freelance journalist. You say that your mission is to observe and not to interfere in the Zimbabwean elections. And you've done past reports and they had some recommendations. So now we are also going to do another report and recommendations. But my question is, since you do not interfere and you've made some recommendations, are the past recommendations being followed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we assess each election on its individual merits, and we assess them against the principles and the standards that Zimbabwe has signed up to. We seek not to compare elections, but of course, if there are elements which continue to be of a type that we would need to make recommendations on, we will do so for these elections as well. And we hope that after the elections and with those recommendations made, there could be a robust follow-up process and an interaction between the various stakeholders and the European Union to try to put some of those recommendations into effect in the coming months and years.
We have one question here, the gentleman in the black shirt.
My name is Conrad Marawashi. As you continue to observe the election, some of the candidates so far have been barred from contesting, from Malawi, from one contesting party, and presidential hope. What would be your comment as the election observation?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, our long-term observers deployed this week. They are located throughout the country, and we are following all aspects of that process. That includes the court cases which are ongoing. So we are aware and we have been present at the court hearings. We're following those proceedings very closely. We'll also be following any appeals that emanate from those decisions. And in that composite assessment, we'll be looking at all of those different cases and their judgments together to see how they impact the election process as a whole, and that's something that we will be reporting on in our preliminary statement.
We had a question, the lady in green.
Thank you. My name is Peter Mawere. Which of the principles or some of the principles that you are expecting Zimbabwe to satisfy?
Yeah, no, this is very important, and these are elements which are set out in key international documents like the UN Declaration of Human Rights, also the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights, and these speak on principles like genuine and democratic elections, but also principles such as equality or universality or transparency. And so when we are looking at these elections, we're looking to see the extent to which those principles are given life in the election process. And just to also note that these are principles which are echoed in African documents, the African Charter and other subsidiary documents which Zimbabwe has also espoused. And so this is really something which the Zimbabwean authorities and the Zimbabwean people have self-declared as things that they would like to see in their elections, and we will be looking at the extent to which that is true.
Do we have any other questions? Did I miss anyone?
Maybe as a follow-up to Tendo's question, is it likely that the European Union can actually put Zimbabwe to task if these principles are not followed?
Yeah, so I think we can honestly and transparently reflect back the extent to which these principles have been met or not met. And I think then there can be discussions held on what can be done to improve those circumstances. This is the case in many countries that we observe. This is the case also in European countries. And so it's a global effort. It's a global spirit of partnership to try to improve democratic processes and to try to move forward this discussion in a democratic direction. And it's a pillar of European Union engagement in this area.
Well, thank you very much for attending this press conference this afternoon. I close this event and the next press conference will be approximately 2 days after Election Day with the presentation of our preliminary statement. We will inform you in due time. Thank you very much, and as I mentioned, at the exit is a press release, and thank you.
Thank you very much.